Welcome to Lessons in Consciousness. This is part 2 of episode 6, where I'll continue talking about out-of-body experiences. In this segment, I'm going to talk about remote viewing. Now, normally people don't think of remote viewing as an out-of-body experience, but I'm going to include it in this category because it's all about consciousness perceiving things that are remote or outside of the body and the physical five senses. Remote viewing has a pretty interesting history, with the U.S. government getting involved in research since the early 1970s. The Stargate project, which ran from the 1970s to 1995, was hosted by the U.S. military and the CIA and looked into psychic phenomenon, especially remote viewing. Some of the more famous people associated with the remote viewing program are Ingo Swann, Joseph McMoneagle, and Ed Dames, who's reportedly been on the Coast to Coast radio program about 30 times. Okay, so what evidence is there besides a government program that remote viewing is possible? Well, in the 1970s, Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ did experiments at the Stanford Research Institute with remote viewer Ingo Swann. Their research got published in peer-reviewed journals like the scientific journal Nature. In a 1976 article from the journal Proceedings of the IEE, Puthoff and Targ showed positive results for their numerous experiments. Here's a quote from their article. "We have carried out more than 50 experiments under controlled laboratory conditions with several individuals whose remote perceptual abilities have been developed sufficiently to allow them at times to describe correctly, often in great detail, geographical or technical material such as buildings, roads, laboratory apparatus, and the like." To illustrate what they found, I want to show you some pictures from Russell Targ's book, The Reality of ESP, A Physicist Proof of Psychic Abilities. The drawing you're looking at was done by a remote viewer named Hella Hamid. It doesn't look like much of anything really until you look at the target she was viewing. Here's some pictures of the target. Looks like a pedestrian bridge covered with safety fencing. Let's put the pictures up next to each other. Now we start to see some similarities. Things that are close enough to not be coincidence or just lucky guesses. Targ has many illustrations and examples of this in his book, so if you're interested in this stuff, it might be a good place to go for more information. This research gives evidence that consciousness can go outside of the body, or at least access information that's outside of the five senses. Now, before I go, I want to give you a technique that you can use to practice your own version of remote viewing at home. What I want you to do is I want you to go online and pick a spot on a Google map from someplace you've never been before. Pick a spot on a major street in a city you've never visited and draw as much detail about that spot on the map as you can on a piece of paper. Then, after you've made your guesses, use the Google Street View tool in the Google Maps to look around the area to see how close you got to guessing correctly. Now, remember, when doing your remote viewing, feel as relaxed as you possibly can. Take your time making your guesses. The experts involved in remote viewing always say that quieting the mind chatter is crucial to being good at remote viewing. So you might want to meditate before attempting the Google Map and Street View remote viewing exercise. Also, remote viewers can see what exists in the future and in the past. So try to be specific with your intention to view what the Google Street View cameras picked up. Well, good luck and happy remote viewing. In the next episode, I'm going to look at talking to dead people, better known as psychic mediumship. I'm Dr. Bruce King, and you've been watching Lessons in Consciousness. Okay, it looks like we're on live here. Usually there's a little bit of a delay from the video, so I'm starting to talk right now Okay, good. So everything is good. The sound is good. I'm going to take this out of my ears and turn that off. And we're going to go. We're a go. So let me just review a little bit about remote viewing. Okay. And I see my notes here. Thank you from the producer here. Derek Brose is producing tonight. So thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it a lot. And anyway, let me talk a little bit about remote viewing. Move this over a little bit so I can see that. Okay. Now, just to review, remote viewing is someone is given a target to view. And sometimes this is map coordinates like latitude or longitude. And sometimes they actually use a person that they call a beacon that goes out to the area and sees certain things that the person that's supposed to be remote viewing doesn't know about, right? But it's, to me, that's not really remote viewing. That's more like telepathy, but they've used that in a lot of the remote viewing tests, so I'm including that as part of what they call remote viewing. But that's essentially what they did. And the Stargate project, it's not necessarily the movie Stargate, which is pretty cool, right? But or the TV show. No, the Stargate project from the 1970s, the early 70s through all the way to 1995 was about remote viewing mostly. I mean, they tested other psychic abilities, but that was mostly about trying to see if remote viewing worked or not. And they spent a long time doing it, so they must have got some positive result, is my guess. But when they shut down the program in 1995, they said that it wasn't worth it, that they weren't really getting any actionable data. So, in fact, I'm getting a note here. It says Jim Marrs' book, Pay Spies, is a great book. So, on the topic of remote viewing. Okay, so good tip there from the Voice of Resistance. Thank you very much. That's good information. And yeah, I'm going to actually talk about a lot of other books too coming up here that you guys, if you're interested in remote viewing, there's a ton of stuff out there to read. But I'm going to go over some of the good and the bad and the ugly. There's, it's not all nice stuff that's going on with remote viewing or necessarily valid stuff. There's some weird kind of crackpot stuff that goes on and not very scientific actually stuff that happens. So also another comment here from the Voice of Resistance. It says that Jim Marrs claims the government tried to suppress his book before they declassified it. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of claims in remote viewing, and a lot of it's just, it's just hype. It's a lot of bunk, I gotta say. I mean, the more I look into some of these people that used to be associated with the Stargate project, the more I'm get skeptical, actually, of their claims. I mean, I hate to say that because there's a lot of validity in psychic abilities from the research I've done, but unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that went on, especially after the Stargate project, is kind of questionable. But just to review a little bit, the father of remote viewing, okay, according to Joseph McMoneagle, is a guy by the name of Rene Warcollier, okay? And I'll show you, there's actually a Wikipedia page on him if you want to look at that. In fact, here, I'll show you that. There, I'll put it on 3D Mix, see if we can do that. Yeah, there we go. I'll go over here and put it up. There's the Wikipedia page. You can see there's a whole thing on Rene Wark. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he was supposedly the father of remote viewing. Now, his research basically was done in like the 1970s up until like not the 1970s. He actually started out in the 1920s through the 1940s, and he worked with a guy by the name of Gardner Murphy, who believed in reincarnation and related that to a collective consciousness. So if you remember the old shows that I've done, remember that I've done stuff on collective consciousness and talked about that, and all this stuff is kind of interrelated. And you see that the more you dig into this stuff. Anyway, Gardner Murphy suggested that when we die, our consciousness merges into a larger field of consciousness, that our individual personality merges into that. So I don't know. I mean, that sounds like what I talked about with the collective consciousness. But anyway, Collier's research was really a sender-receiver telepathy experiment. So I don't know, could you call him the father of remote viewing? Maybe. Anyway, that just gives you a little history on remote viewing. Then there's the guy who's like the granddaddy of all remote viewers. It's Ingo Swann. And here's his website. I'll put that up. There we go. Put it over here and show you. Ingo Swann is dead. So, in fact, he died. In fact, it says on his website, a memorial service on March 2nd, 2003. So he's dead, but his family apparently is still keeping his website up. And you can go to his website, which is biomindsuperpowers.com. Maybe you can see it there on the right up there. I'm highlighting it. You want to go to his website. He's got a bunch of information here. Content, telepathy, the opening up of can superpowers be trained, and on and on and on. He's got some of his books and stuff. The Secrets of Power. Yeah, who doesn't want Secrets of Power, right? Yeah, that's one of his books. And then here's my favorite: Psychic Sexuality. Who's not interested in psychic sexuality? In fact, the book sold out. It's so popular. So anyway, that seems kind of questionable too, in my opinion. But Ingo actually did a lot of research with the guys at the Stanford Research Institute, and he also did a lot of research with Michael Persinger. Remember the guy with the God helmet and the circumcerebral magnetic stimulator? That's Michael Persinger did that stuff and research with Ingo Swann. So kind of interesting there that he's sort of the granddaddy. He's been around quite a bit. Here's another website. In fact, let me see if I can't get it so I can have a single window open. Let's see if this doesn't take up too much of my CPU to do this. Let's see what it does here. Yeah, this is a website. No, it didn't do it. Okay, that's okay. Oh yeah, it did. Hang on. Farsight. This is the Farsight Institute. Okay, here's a website. This is the guy. This guy's name is Dr. Courtney Brown. You can wait a minute. Let me put him. There we go. Put him on screen here. This is their website, the Farsight Institute. Here, I'll shrink it down a little bit. Maybe be able to see it a little better. This guy in the video that you see is Dr. Courtney Brown, and they have this whole thing about how they found the information on the Great Pyramid of Giza. See if I can slide that over. And the mystery is solved, and you can see that up there. And basically, they're selling some CDs, and they're telling people that they've remote viewed the buildings of the Great Pyramids and that they can see how they did it and all this stuff. Now, how do you refute data like that? Well, you can't. I mean, it could just be completely made up BS, right? So you don't really know, but they're selling a DVD so you can find out all their supposedly legitimate information. And then, of course, there's the thing on Atlantis, the true story. So they got some other stuff that they're selling, of course, and they may be sincere. I don't know. I may sound a little bit jaded on this because it's not really that scientific, because there actually is other scientific stuff out there, but the Farsight Institute, I don't know. Make your own choice on that. Go to their website if you want to. It's farsight.org, and you can check them out. Let's see. Here's some interesting stuff here. I'm just kind of showing you all the stuff that's out there. See if I can. Here we go. This is Len Buchanan's website, okay, and he's basically controlled remote viewing. It's crviewer.com. Now, this isn't even a very good website, but he's one of the guys that actually works with the Farsight Institute, the last webpage I showed you. But he's trying to train people in remote viewing, and that's one of the big things. The ways they make money is to try to train people in remote viewing. And these are people that are sort of the ex-military people. If I'm not mistaken, Len Buchanan is an ex. Here, I'll go to his page here. Yeah, here he is. There's a picture of the guy. There's Len Buchanan. You can see him here. Yeah, he's a guy that worked with the remote viewing project, the Stargate project. So, I really don't see any way on his webpage, though, to purchase his product. He's selling student training, but I see absolutely no way. Now, he's got some books here. Let's see. Let's click on his books link and see what. Yeah, books by Len Buchanan. Let's see. The Seventh Sense, The Secrets of Remote Viewing as Told by a Psychic. So there you go. You can look at his book if you want to and see what you think. I haven't read it, so I can't really comment on it, but maybe some interesting information about the remote viewing program with the CIA and the Department of Defense. And also, he's got a fiction book that he's written called Gravity Can Be Your Friend, which is a fiction book. So that's some interesting information there from one of the other guys that was in the Stargate project. Let me get rid of that. Now here's Russell Targ's website. This guy seems to be actually the most legitimate, and he's actually a physicist, Russell Targ. Here it is, IRVA, the International Remote Viewing Association. So that's kind of interesting. You can go to their website, irva.org, and they've actually got some interesting people. In fact, they have a keynote speaker here, Dr. Eben Alexander, who was speaking at one of their events here. He's got a New York Times bestseller, Proof of Heaven, which I've read that book, which actually is a cool book, which kind of relates to obviously it relates to out-of-body experience, because here's a guy that had a near-death experience, which is kind of similar to remote viewing, because when you have a near-death experience, a lot of people rise out of their bodies and look back at their bodies. So, and you can see on his website that he has events, conferences, speakers, and contributors, remote viewing links, remote viewing books. Let's see what he's got book-wise. Looks like he's selling all of Ingo Swann's books. Well, he worked a lot with Ingo Swann. Ingo Swann worked with him when he was doing the research at the Stanford Research Institute. In fact, Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff were essentially the original guys in the early 70s that were doing this research on remote viewing with Ingo Swann. You can see his picture right there. There's Ingo right there. Now, he's dead, of course, now, but just recently died last year. But him, Russell Targ, and Hal Puthoff started this out, and the CIA got interested in it, and the Department of Defense, the military, got interested in this. And so I guess like the movie, Men Who Stare at Goats, if you've ever seen that movie, they got together and started doing research to try to see if they could use it for military advantage. But there's all of Ingo's books, or most of Ingo's books here, which I have not read, but who knows? They could be interesting. Ingo has purportedly been proven to be a legitimate remote viewer. Now, the research that Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff did has come into question, and I'm going to go into that in a minute. There actually is some stuff that they did that, their research is not that great, okay? And I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to show you some other stuff. Some of these other guys that were involved. Here, let's try another mix here. Yeah, that's a little better, so you can see the window a little better. I want to throw this up. Let's see if I can get it up there. There we go. Here's a book, The Time Machine, The Ultimate Time Machine, by Joseph McMoneagle. Now, he was supposedly like one of the original guys in the military's Stargate project, and he wrote a book called The Ultimate Time Machine. Here I'll read a quote here from the Wikipedia, which talks about him. He says, quote, or from the Wikipedia quote about Joseph McMoneagle, it says, McMoneagle's future predictions include the passing of a teenager's right to work bill, which that hasn't happened, a new religion without the emphasis of Christianity, I don't think so, a science of the soul, well, maybe, I don't know, I haven't seen that, a vaccine for AIDS, not aware of any vaccine for AIDS, a movement to eliminate television, okay, I haven't heard of that, and a temporary tattoo craze that would replace the wearing of clothing. Okay, now, body painting might be what they're talking about. That might actually be close, but and according to McMoneagle, all of this stuff was supposedly to take place between 2002 and 2006, which most of this stuff never happened, okay? In fact, there's some other predictions from these remote viewers that are kind of sketchy, and I'll show you some of them here. This gets into the stuff that kind of creates a lot of doubt in my mind for a lot of this stuff. Unfortunately, I got to tell you the truth, the facts, okay? But there is some encouraging stuff. I'll give you the encouraging news towards the end of the presentation here. But there's some other stuff that's kind of weird and discouraging that these people do. Now remember, remote viewers can look into the past or look into the future. That's why there's this the time machine thing from the Ultimate Time Machine from Joseph McMoneagle. Okay, let me move that out of the way and see. I'm going to show you some other stuff here. Here's a prediction from remote viewers. Here, I'm going to pull that back up in here. Catastrophic meteor impact before spring 2013. Okay, well, no catastrophic meteor impact, so that was wrong. And we'll see, like, who predicted this. Actually, a couple of people. There's a guy named Aaron Hansen. No, he didn't predict that. I'm sorry. A guy named Courtney Brown predicted that in 1996, 97, there was going to be a big ET invasion. So, and that was the guy at the Far Sight Institute. So he was wrong about that. And this one, I don't remember. Ed Dames is one of the remote viewers. There's another name. I'm throwing out these names. These are guys that are all involved in the remote viewing community. And I believe Ed Dames is one of the guys who predicted this catastrophic meteor impact before spring 2013. Well, that didn't happen. We know that didn't happen. So another strike against remote viewers. Sorry, guys. Yeah, and I talked about Courtney Brown, the guy at Farsight, who predicted in 96, 97 there was going to be a big alien invasion, okay, before or after the 96 election. Of course, that never happened. And here's a guy named Aaron Hansen who remote viewed the 2012 election results in 2011 and predicted that Mitt Romney would win. Of course, that was wrong. So, more wrong stuff. Now, there have been successful remote viewings. In fact, I talk about that in the video, and I'll show you some of that stuff. In fact, the lady, Hella Hammett, who is actually a photographer for like Life magazine. Here, I'll show you this a little more flat screen. You can see it a little better. That's her picture right there that she drew, and I showed this in the video, and she drew what she saw, which was this picture. So I think that's interesting. That's pretty close because they had basically a viewer, or I'm sorry, a beacon. Somebody went out to this area and looked at this stuff, and then she was somewhere else and she drew a picture of it, not knowing where the person was. And that's pretty accurate, actually. And I would say, actually, that's an accurate picture of what I would say is telepathy. Okay, they're calling it remote viewing. Whatever, you know, it is a psychic thing. I mean, that's a pretty good evidence that something psychic was going on. Also, let me tell you that the Stanford Research Institute has had successful remote viewing, and the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab conducted a couple of hundred trials, okay, to see if they could replicate the Stanford Research Institute's experiments, and they got similar results as the Stanford Research Institute. So that gives some validity to it. You know, Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab is pretty legitimate, so, you know, that shows some legitimacy, except here's the problem, and I'm going to quote Wikipedia again on remote viewing. It says, quote, "The psychologists David Marks and Richard Kamen attempted to replicate Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff's remote viewing experiments that were carried out in the 1970s at the Stanford Research Institute. In a series of 35 studies, they were unable to replicate the results, so investigating the procedures of the original experiments. Marks and Kamen discovered that the notes given to the judges in Targ and Puthoff's experiments contained clues as to which order they were carried out, such as referring to yesterday's two targets, or they had the date of the sessions written at the top of the page. And they concluded that these clues were the reason for the experiment's high hit rates, unquote. And that's a little quote from Wikipedia talking about the problems with the research done at Stanford Research Institute. So even though I present some of this evidence, you got to dig deeper and say, well, is it really good evidence? And it's questionable on that. Even though Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab got good results or got similar results, it's hard to say. Obviously, there needs to be more research. Now, the person who so far has gotten the most valid, legitimate results is Michael Persinger, who did the remote viewing studies with Ingo Swann in 2002 with that circumcerebral magnetic stimulator. And they showed positive results. And then also he did research in 2010 with Sean Harabanz. Michael Persinger did. And so far as I know, nobody has refuted Michael Persinger's research. So that's some good news on that. Okay. Now, if you want to learn how to remote view yourself, you can read some other books. In fact, here I'll show you some other books. I'll go back. I'll put this one up. This is a book. Joe McMoneagle's book, Remote Viewing Secrets. You can read his book, maybe learn how to be a good remote viewer. I don't know. I haven't read this book, so I can't vouch for it. Here's another one, Natural Remote Viewing. So, try those out and see if they work for you. Also, I want to give you an example of trying remote viewing yourself. And let's go to, let me pull that away here. Let's just go, here, I'll put it back up here. Let's go to Google Maps, okay? Let's just go to Google Maps and I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. Now, I live in Houston, so let me go somewhere where I've never been, which is going to be hard because I'm an old guy and I've been everywhere, right? Let's expand out. Let's go. Oh, I don't know. Let's go up to Missouri. I've never been to Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, so let's zoom in on Kansas City, Missouri. There we go. You guys can see that here. I'm going to zoom in a little more. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a street, okay, in Kansas City, Missouri. Here, let's pull that over a little bit towards the center. Pull it back. Zoom in a little more. And maybe one more time. All right. Okay, this gives us a pretty good close-up of Kansas City. Now I'm going to pick an area that, I don't know what's there. Okay, Longfellow and Troost Avenue. Okay, right there, you can see it. I'm going to pick this area on the map. Okay, and I'm going to try to envision what I see there. And I'm going to kind of halfway guess. This is just an example, okay? I'm going to say there's some houses on the corner with some steps going up and a sign that's about 15 feet in the air, and it's for a small business on one corner. Okay, so let's see what I got. I'm going to actually take... Oh, that's Pegman. I don't want that. Hang on. Pegman? No, I want the Street View Man. Hang on. Street View. That's what I want. See, I'm used to using this in the other software. So, anyway. Oh, sorry. Hang on. I'm going to get this in a second. Sorry, guys. I wonder why it's not working in this. Well, anyway, I'll tell you what. Just use the Street View guy and put him in there, and it'll show you if you're right or not. Okay, now for some reason... Okay, that is the Street View guy. Okay. All right, I'm sorry. I'm not used to using this particular one. So let me go back here real quick. Sorry. And we're going to try again. I know this is testing everyone's patience. We're going to go back to Kansas City. We're going to see how close I was to my guess. Hang on, I'm gonna set it up real quick. And we're going to see how close I was. This is the problem with a live show. Sometimes it doesn't work like you want it to. All right, we're getting there, getting there. Okay, here we are, Longfellow and Toscott Avenue. All right, I'm going to put that back up on the screen. All right, here we go. We're at Longfellow and Toscott Avenue. Remember what I said, the house with the steps and a sign and a small business. So I'm going to take, come on little guy, I'm going to take the little Street View guy and put him right there. All right, here we go. And that should give us a street view. Okay, here's the street view. That's not what I saw at all. Okay, let's switch around. There's like a, wow. There's fields, a torn down house. Okay, Kansas City is not looking so good. If you can see that. That's nothing like what I guessed. So we'll move a little bit forward. This is, now that's nothing like what I predicted. But you get the idea. You get how you can use Street View to test your remote viewing abilities. Okay, it's like longitude, latitude. So try that out, see how you do with your own abilities, and put it in the comments section. This show is going to be archived, so please leave your comments in the comment section. Also, before I go, I want to thank Derek Bros for helping me out tonight by doing the technical stuff, and anybody who's interested in, if you didn't catch the first part of the show, you can see it on theconsciousresistance.com. Just go to the video tab, and all the shows are going to be archived from now on. You can watch them and share them with your friends. Please let them know. Also, I want to thank everybody who showed up tonight to view the show, and I hope it was helpful and informative for you. And next week, we're going to actually talk about something really interesting. It's going to be psychic mediumship. And I actually have an interview with a pretty good psychic medium that lives in Houston, Texas. She's an old friend of mine, and I think you're going to find it very interesting. She actually says a lot of really neat things about psychic mediumship. And anyway, so catch that next Wednesday night. Hopefully we won't have any technical problems. But next Wednesday night, we're going to talk about psychic mediumship. And be sure and join us then. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. And I will see you next week. Oh, and don't forget to watch Derek's show Sunday night. Anyway, I will see you guys next week. And I'm going to cut off here. So thanks for joining me.